So not long ago, I was in this conversation in the official Death Battle server, which if you want to ever bother me, please don't, but that's where you can go do it, I guess. And the topic came up, like, what episodes, like, what episodes are there in Death Battle where the combatants have them, like, the most different or most similar abilities? And I thought that would actually be interesting to do as, like, a video, but doing, like, a long-form analysis sort of deal on that would be not only really boring, in my opinion, to write up, and, like, I wouldn't really enjoy editing it, but I kind of wanted to do it just, like, in a tier list, just, like, make these tiers. I know that they did it in the server. They were making tiers. I did not pay any attention because I wanted to just do it myself. And I'm really annoyed that tier list makers decided for 2 of these tiers, for the names, let's just have the alignment be to the left instead of centered. Bloody hell. So now I'm not an expert on all these characters. Absolutely not. I know a tertiary amount about several of them, or most of them. I know something about at least. So do feel free to correct me if I ever ask, if I'm not knowledgeable enough. But yeah, so for this video, as you can probably tell on screen, the tiers are almost totally different. These are, like, there might be some similarities, but for the most part, their power sets are entirely unrelated. Fairly different is where I'm going to put, like, a character, like, when the characters are mostly different. Like, they've got differences, but they've got tons of similarities as well, but I think that they're more different than similar. One has all the other characters' abilities. This will be in the situations where one character is just the opponent plus more. You know, like, Zuko Todoroki, to spoil, is most likely going to end up there, because everything Zuko can do, Todoroki can do, but Todoroki just has more as well. Very similar is when characters, like, there's plenty of similarities. I'm not sure what's going to go there. Not terribly similar, it's just, I feel like I've kind of spaced this wrong. That's where I should probably go. And I'm going to swap the colors because that's really bothering me now. Not terribly similar, and then very similar, and then almost identical, and then the same character, which there's one episode I can think of that's going to be here, and that's it. I can't think of what else could be there. Let's just get through it. This tier list does have every episode, well, I assume I have not specifically looked through, but every episode up to Bill's Cypherverse Discord. If you're wondering, Nemesis, why didn't you wait until Season 10 was over to do this, you idiot? That's because I am an idiot, and I absolutely would have forgotten if I had waited until that point. But if you're wondering, Cole X, Alex vs. Cole would be in the top, almost totally different. They have basically nothing in common beyond the fact that they can read the minds of dead people through entirely different ways, but they can do that, and they're good at jumping. Beyond that, one's like electrical powers, ice powers, stuff like that, and one is this like gross biological virus powers, absorbing others, making weapons out of their flesh, that sort of stuff. Totally unrelated. So let's just begin. We got starting off Boba Fett versus Samus Aran. Now, to my knowledge, nothing Boba Fett has is something that Samus lacks, except maybe the jetpack. Is that enough to really differentiate Boba? Because, like, he's got a lot of bombs, but Samus has bombs too. And his blaster, like, he has got a blaster, and Samus technically doesn't have, I mean, no, she does have one in the same way. In her Zero Suit state, she's got a pistol, which is kind of like what he's got going on. But, like, anything his blaster can do, her arm cannon can do. So, really, I don't think Boba has anything that Samus doesn't, except net and jetpack. But I'm gonna put, not terribly similar is gonna be like the middle ground for when I haven't decided yet. The jetpack is a huge part of Boba's arsenal, but I guess if you include the jetpack and the lightsaber, because he does have lightsabers, even if they didn't give it to him in the first episode. Though Samus does not have any sort of like plasma blade weapon. She's got the plasma whip in Smash Brothers. I don't know if it showed up in any game outside of Smash Brothers. I don't remember Zero Mission very well, which is where she was in her Zero Suit for a big portion of the game. Oh, not a big portion, but like a portion of the game. I would say, I can't say one has all the other's abilities, because there are two very big things with Boba that Samus doesn't have. I'm going to put them in not terribly similar. I'm going to leave them there. I like how I said I'm not sure what will go there. Actually, no. Very similar. They have very similar arsenals. but Boba's got 2 things that Samus doesn't, and Samus has a ton of things Boba doesn't. But the main core of it, being the super suit, energy weapons, explosives, bombs, missiles, they do share a lot of that. Akuma versus Shang Tsung. Do they have anything in common at all? Beyond the fact that they have martial arts and projectiles, but like Shang's projectiles are flaming skulls and shit, and like snake avatars, and Akuma's is his ki. He shoots ki at you and hate energy. I think these two are like, they're almost entirely different. They're almost totally different. Like, they've got basically nothing in common. Shang's big thing is shape-shifting, and Akuma's big thing is destroying your soul by running in and punching you like a billion times. Like, basically completely different. And this, by the way, the individual tiers are not going to be ordered. It's going to be chronological order. Rogue One Woman also almost totally different. They do have like super strength, super speed, super durability, and flight, but if we went with that, basically every single character in Death Battle has some manner of like superhuman strength, speed, durability, so gotta be more than that. Wonder Woman's main abilities beyond that are like in her arsenal, like she can force you to tell the truth with her lasso, the tiara will always come back, she's got the atom slicing sword, which she can't actually use. Even in Death Battle, they show the panel where she says, I can't actually do that. I need your microscopic vision, Clark. But she can't do that. But Rogue's main thing is like taking the powers of those she touches. Basically unrelated to anything Mondi has. Goomba versus Koopa. All I know is stuff that they share beyond like yeah, the Goomba's got the shoe, but I'm just gonna put them in very similar because like I don't know well enough. Hagar versus Zangief though, they even highlight how they like stole each other's moves. I don't think I can put it anywhere other than almost completely identical. Hagar's got a pipe and Zangief has a wicked backhand. That's the difference. That's the big difference. Ninja Turtles. So beyond the fact that they all have like all the same biological abilities, those being shell and retract into shell, the main thing that they have going for them is their weapons. They're all very different. And I'm gonna put them in just fairly different though, because they do share identical like biological abilities. It's just that when it comes to their like the Ninja Turtles, they don't have much in the way of biological abilities, unless you look like in extended media with like the Super Turtles and all that, where like they would be totally different. Because like Raphael as Gridix has the ability to grow and shrink. Graviturtle, I think, is Leonardo, control over gravity. Shellectro is Donatello, power of electricity. And I forget them, like Super Mikey, like the Goop one. He's got Goop powers. The Schmooze! That's Mikey. And Zitz Leonardo, like almost totally different. Zitz's powers are he can convert like his body into various weapons and shit. Leonardo's got nothing to match that. No counter, there's basically nothing they share. And Season 1's going to take up most of the top tier, isn't it? Because Yoshi, Riptor, they can eat you. They don't even have Dromaeosaurid abilities. Riptor, she does have the claws and the teeth, but like her main thing's like acid spit as well. Yoshi doesn't have claws. He doesn't have teeth. He doesn't have acid spit. What he does have is he can make eggs and throw them, and he can grow abilities from his body based on what he's eating. Nothing in common. Felicia versus Taukaka. That one's interesting. I don't remember like Taukaka's ability super well. I think she can like different weapons can come out of her claws. She's got her arsenal of things to throw. Mostly when you play Taukaka, you're just darting around like all over the fucking place. With a lot of quick attacks. Felicia, I think, is fairly similar. I can't say they're almost completely identical. I will say that they're fairly similar. They're fairly similar in, like, the whole fast claw cat girl, slicey dicey. I'm tempted to say that it goes in one as the other's abilities, because... Well, no, because they did include the cartoon with Felicia. Like, they did use footage of the cartoon, and if you do that, then she does have the power of turning into a cat. As useful as that is. Kratos versus Spawn. They're almost totally different. Look, when it comes to like powers, I'm sure like they can both like fuck with souls and like they can both like resist a lot of stuff. But Kratos is like, what I remember for Kratos' powers, at least in the Greek era, the most notable thing is like he can summon lightning and like blast shit and turn stuff to stone. Spawn can probably do all that as well, but when it comes to beyond that, Spawn's like got portals, he's got like mind control stuff, I think. Hellfire. Kratos can do fire, but it's not hellfire. Like, they do function differently. Differently? That's not a word. They do function differently to my knowledge. The big thing is, Spawn's weapons amount to primarily guns, while Kratos's is, like, okay, so you can compare the Chains of Exile and shit to, like, Spawn's, his own chains from Letha, but that's a very loose thing, because, like, Spawn just throws chains at you. Kratos doesn't actually use the chains as much as, you know, the big fuck-off blade at the end of them. I'd say they're almost completely different. Like, they have very little overlap, to my memory, of their abilities, which is obviously not perfect. I haven't played any of the, like, old God of War games in a long time. Bomberman Dig Dug, what a surprise. White Bomber has bombs, and Taisa Hori has a pump. That is the extent of their arsenals for the most part. I know Bomberman's definitely got more, but there's nothing really special. Vegeta versus Shadow. I think everything Vegeta has, Shadow also has. Shadow can fly, Shadow can shoot energy, Shadow can... That's all Vegeta can do, actually. He can just fly and shoot energy. There's not much to Vegeta's kit. While Shadow's got, like, time control, teleportation, what else can Chaos do? Like, a lot of Chaos does something like the same stuff. It's mostly like that esoteric control over space and time, that is, like, the core of Shadow's abilities. Even though Vegeta won, Shadow has all the abilities, but more. Mario vs. Sonic. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh shit. Oh fuck. So what do they have in common? I believe that Sonic does have fire powers like Mario. Obviously they're both really good at running and jumping. They're both great at parkour. Both good at punching, kicking. They both have invincible super forms. Both can fly with the right power-up. Both, I think Mario can, like, not exactly double jump, but he can, like, replicate the effect of a double jump. Yeah, with the cloud power-up, which is similar enough to how the electric shield can sort of give Sonic a double jump. While they do have plenty of differences, I actually think they're very similar. Oh, actually, no, because when you look beyond the basic shit, like what, like, Mario has nothing quite like the Wisp, but Sonic has nothing like the Ice Flower, the Gold Flower, the Reset Clock, I think it's called. Because Sonic does have a time stop in Sonic Adventure 2 Battle multiplayer, I want to say. But that is a very deep cut to give Sonic that power, while with Mario, it's just a power-up he has in a game. Like, it's not any specific mode. I'm gonna have to say not terribly similar. I'm not, like, confident enough to, like, say for certain whether they go in fairly different or not similar. Which sounds very similar, like, fuck! They sound like very similar, like, tiers. But, for not terribly similar, what I'm going for is, like, they're not super similar, they're not super different, like, it's like a good middle ground. And I think that's what you could say with Mario and Sonic. They have a lot of overlap with their powers, but also a lot of unique powers. And, like, at their base, like, their very base, the main difference is that Mario's portrayed as a really strong guy, and Sonic is portrayed as a really fast guy, which are very different, but, yeah, I'd say they're more similar than they are, or they're more different than they are similar, but it's not a huge margin. Just gonna add a row below for stuff like Beaver Black, which is not counted. So Justin Bieber, Freaking Black, and Death Battle vs. the World. Luke Skywalker versus Harry Potter. I'm pretty sure Harry does, like, because they gave him all the unforgivable curses, he does have spells that Luke doesn't have. Like, Luke can't cause a random cut to appear on... He did that in the fight, I guess, so... Luke doesn't have, like, Avada Kedavra, which in the book is just, like, a flash of light and your target instantly dies, as opposed to the movies, where it's, like, a blast. Luke doesn't have that. Luke doesn't really have projectiles in any way, but Harry in the books, to my knowledge, can't do non-verbal spells the way they say. He's really good at them in the episode. He can't do them, but he does have blasts with, I couldn't name them, various spells. I'd say that Luke, Harry, almost totally different. There's not a lot of overlap, beyond the fact that their abilities are very bright. Chun-Li versus Mai Shiranui. Chun-Li mostly has ki, and Mai has fire. Which in effect are very similar, but by their nature are very different. One's fire and one's spirit energy, which in Ken's case is flaming, but that's Ken, that's not Chun-Li. Chun's like all about her kicks and big energy balls that are like very close to her hands, which is something like the Kikosho is not very long range. Mai is fans, fire, and just like general attacks with most of her body. I don't think she has like a kick focus like Chun-Li. I don't think their powers are entirely different, because the main thing is, like, ki and fire have a very similar sort of effect, but I would say they're fairly different in... Are they not almost... No. They both use their fighting spirit to... I don't know how Mai's powers work, like, I want to say she uses her fighting spirit or, like, some supernatural power. For all I know, she's got a Zippo lighter in her tits, and she just, like, flicks that on really fast. But I say they're fairly different. I think they're, like, almost entirely different, the way the characters above are, because at least in practice, the ki and the fire work in similar ways. Starscream versus Rainbow Dash. Almost totally different. Starscream's got null rays that deactivate electronics. He has an immortal spark that can possess things, control the weather. I mean, that's the one similarity they have, is that they can change the weather. And they're fast. Starscream's got missiles, he's got bullets. Rainbow Dash is really fast. I mean, okay, they both fly as well. They're both fast flyers who can affect the weather in different ways. Rainbow Dash doesn't have much of a kit, honestly, but it is very different to Starscream. There's basically no overlap. Master Chief versus Doomguy, I'm just gonna say, I think every weapon that Chief has, Doomslayer also has, as like an equivalent of. Even, like, the one thing that a time ago you could say is that Chief has a energy sword, and Doomguy does not. Now he's got the Crucible, which is an energy sword, basically. It's very different in design and usage, beyond the fact that you get a few uses and you instant kill basically anything. But, like, they're very different types of weapons, but they both have a bladed weapon. The thing is that Doomslayer has a lot more, I think, in terms of... And now I'm thinking about it, maybe it goes the other way. Doomslayer's weaponry actually isn't that expansive. Like, the Unmaker is the big thing that's, like, very different to anything Chief has. Now I think about it, no, I've changed my mind. Chief has everything Slayer has. He's got an energy weapon. The Gravity Hammer is a melee weapon that, like, Doomguy doesn't have a similarity to. Doomguy just got the chainsaw. But, like, when you look at Chief's weapons, the Covenant weapons offer a level of plasma weaponry that Doomslayer does not have nearly as much when it comes to plasma weaponry. I do think Chief has all the same weapons as Doomslayer, the more I think about it, but more. It's just that Doomslayer is way fucking stronger. And the Spartan Laser, I think, is close enough in effect to the big fucking gun 9000 that you might as well just be like, yeah, it's a big gun, you point, you charge, and what you're pointing at stops being there. Of course, in the newer games, like I don't know if it works the same way in the old games, but in the newer games, when you fire the BFG, it, like, has, like, a trail of electricity that, like, kills everything around it, too. But, yeah, and then, like, power-ups both have, like, invincibility sort of ones, but Chief has invisibility, the overshield, not overshield, the bubble shield is a very different thing to anything Doomslayer has. Yeah. Eggman versus Wily, that one's hard to decide, because Eggman, when you look at just, like, their own mechs, I think Eggman is just way more diverse, because Wily's mechs, like, the ones that he pilots, tend to just be like, here's a shape, here's a couple gun ports, that's it. While Eggman's got really weirdly different mechs, like the Death Egg Robot and the Egg Dragoon do not function similarly beyond the fact that they have missiles, but other than that, they're very different in how they function. Eggman's got, like, all those weird ones in the Adventure series that, like, what? But when you include, like, all of their things, I'm trying to figure out where the overlap is there. Because without their troops, I think Eggman just has everything Wily has, but more. He's got all the same kind of weapons, but he's got more kinds of them. But with their entire arsenal, you get stuff like, does Eggman have a similar thing to Slashman? or Sheep Man. I'm gonna just say they're fairly different, because you got stuff like the Yellow Devil on Wily's side that Eggman's got nothing like that to my knowledge, but does Wily have anything like the Shadow Androids? Not sure. I'm gonna sneeze now. I have just sneezed. Praise me. Zelda vs. Peach, if you look at the games, I would say that they're very different. Peach actually has an arsenal. Zelda in the Legend of Zelda games, frankly, has a bow and arrow. And not much else. I would say they're fairly different. Peach does not have any, like, conventional weaponry. They both have, like, heart magic, the power of light and all that. But the way they actually fight, Peach uses her emotions to, like, supercharge herself and, like, summons sheep. And Zelda shoots you with an arrow. Hyrule Warriors, if, like, might add more to Zelda's kit. I have not played it in a long time, and I don't think I've ever played Zelda in it anyway. But, yeah. Thor vs. Raiden, you're gonna be really shocked. There's nothing Raiden has that Thor doesn't have beyond a stick. And I'm pretty sure if Thor just wielded Jarnbjorn upside down, that would amount to a stick he can conduct electricity through. Raiden can teleport, Raiden can fly at you with lightning, he can summon and shoot lightning, he can converse with the Elder Gods, Thor can do all that too. Yes, Thor can teleport. But then Raiden can't, like, warp reality. He can't undo the atoms and molecular structure of a pyramid by spinning his hammer really fast. He has Dark Raiden, but that's not like a power-up the same way Warrior's Madness is. That's just another state in his life. I don't think there's anything Raiden can time travel with the amulet. Thor can do that too. So everything Raiden has, Thor has, but more. Link versus Cloud is next. Gosh. Aside from the fact that they have Sword, I don't know where the overlap is on that one either. By the way, this is not like a criticism of, like, Death Battle should always do matchups with characters who have completely different or completely same abilities. I'm not saying that in any of this. I think it's cool to have a mixture of both. It's cool to see a battle of who's the best at what they do, and it's also cool to see a battle of let's have two combatants who were entirely unrelated in their power sets clash and see how they bounce off each other. Both are cool. Link versus Cloud, I think a lot of, like, Cloud's materia is stuff that Link doesn't have. Like, can Link create a black hole? I know they can both stop time, they can both control the elements in different ways, but then a lot of, like, Cloud's status effects are completely, like, just not stuff Link has, but then a lot of Link's weapons are also things that, like, Link's got a lot of weapons, and Cloud really just has multiple variations of a big sword. I'm gonna say they're fairly different. I don't think they're totally different. They have a lot of overlap, but when you get down to their wider arsenals, I think there's a lot of things that are completely different to each other. But yeah. Batman vs. Spider-Man, I'm just gonna be honest, they're basically completely different in power set. Batman has a lot of gadgets, he can throw batarangs, he can grapple around. That's the one similarity, is Batman can grapple and Spider-Man can grapple. Beyond that, Batman's, like, toolkit is totally different to Spider-Man's main, like, Spider-Man's main thing is his spider sense. And his web bombs and, like, his web gadgets are also not really similar to what Batman's packing. They have very different power sets. Pikachu versus Blanca. I'm trying to think. Pikachu, they used Ash's Pikachu, and he mostly just has electrical powers, electrical balls. Iron Tail is the main thing he has that Blanca doesn't. Blanca, I think everything Blanca can do is something Pikachu can do as well, actually. Like, yeah, Pikachu probably can't bite you as badly, but he can bite you. I actually think, to my knowledge, that Pikachu has everything Blanca has, plus he has Iron Tail. And, like, the counter shield, which Blanca doesn't have a similarity to. Goku vs. Superman. There is nothing Goku can do that Superman cannot do. And I'm serious. While Goku's ki is not something that Superman really has, the idea, like, all Goku does is project energy. He shoots lasers with it. Superman can do that with his eyes. The whole, like, the Kamehameha wave. The Spirit Bomb is something that Superman doesn't have a similarity to, but that's still just, like, a big ball of energy, and Superman can just make a big ball of energy with his heat vision, I'm pretty sure. Like, he can just project it. Expelling all Goku, like, Goku can expel all his energy out. Superman can do that with the Solar Flare. Goku can read minds. Superman can read your soul. Goku has Ultra Instinct. Superman has Torchasm Rao. I don't remember it's Rao or Vo, but he has the Theta State, which is basically Ultra Instinct, but better. But then Superman can turn invisible, he can phase through things, he can vibrate so hard he launches a planet across the Omniverse. That's really stupid. Basically, unless you decide the Spirit Bomb is like such a unique thing that it's totally different what Superman has, and I wouldn't be surprised if Superman has a power that draws the energy of like living beings to aid him. That is the one thing Goku has that Superman might not, but beyond that, yeah, Superman does all the abilities Goku has and more. He-Man versus Lion-O, I don't actually know what powers either have beyond Strong Sword Guy. I'm gonna put them in very similar, because I think for the most part, they have a sword that they utilize to like draw power from. But then, yeah, I'm gonna have to leave it there, because He-Man may have a ton of powers that I don't know about. While Lion-O has like, he can create like energy things with his sword, he can see through things. You know what? I'm gonna put them in. One has all the abilities of the others, unless someone can tell me in the comments that He-Man actually has a ton of powers I don't know of. Because Lion-O can see you from far away, he can like summon his sword to him, which I don't know if He-Man can do. He can create shields and barriers and shoot energy beams. He-Man, from everything I've seen from like the original cartoon and some of the comics, is really just a guy who punches really fucking hard. It's funny how more than half of the ones who have more powers than the others, like one has all the abilities the others, are ones that the character just lost who had more powers. Shao Kahn versus M. Bison, they can both manipulate minds, and that is about it. M. Bison's powers, while he does mess around with your soul the way Shao Kahn does, I think his way of using them is actually, no, is it that different? Because for the most part, he rams into you with it. And that's how Shao Kahn uses his magic too. I actually think... No. Shao Kahn and M. Bison, in practice, very similar. Their fighting styles are mostly surround yourself in energy and just hammer into your opponent. Shao Kahn does have a lot of difference with his weapons, which M. Bison doesn't have. But then M. Bison has like energy balls that Shao Kahn kind of has, but he doesn't really use them often. Well, there are differences. I'll put them in not terrible... No, it's gonna have to go very similar. They are similar. Ryu Hayabusa versus Strider Hiryu. Ryu has a bunch of magic stuff that Strider doesn't. Strider has a bunch of tech that Ryu doesn't. The only reason I'm not gonna put them in totally different is because their primary weapon, in both cases, is an indestructible sword. Oh, but you notice I second guess myself a lot with this sort of stuff. Strider's sword, like Strider's sword acts almost completely differently to Ryu's. Yeah, I'm gonna actually put him above, because while they do both have a sword, Strider's acts less like a traditional sword and more like an extending like plasma wave, like a close range plasma wave. Ryu's is just a sword. It just acts like a sword. Anyone who's used a sword knows that what Strider's doing, that's not how a sword works. Oh, and Ivy versus Orchid. Yeah. They have, like, nothing in common power set-wise. Ivy's Valentine is very different to either the Tonfas or the lightsabers that Orchid has. Orchid's Firecat and Fireballs are completely different to Ivy's Alchemy. Yeah, there's no overlap. Fox versus Bucky. Now, they mostly use Cartoon Bucky. To my knowledge, Cartoon Bucky has everything that Fox has, but less. Fox has more weapons. He has more powers, because they did use Smash, but then I didn't use that when I was talking Zelda Peach. So Fox has a gun and bombs and a jetpack, and that's all Bucky has. So Fox, sweet. Terminator vs Robocop. Now, I think with the exception of the plasma gun, every weapon that the Terminator has is something Robocop has an equivalent to, because like he just has contemporary weaponry. But then he does have the nuclear cell. Look, they're very similar. They're a guy who is nigh indestructible because they're made of metal mostly, with a bunch of guns. The difference comes in that one has a laser gun and one has a jetpack. For the most part, they're the same though. Luigi versus Tails. I'm going to be honest. Unlike Mario Sonic, I think they are almost entirely different. While Tails does have the shield power-ups that are similar to some of Luigi's power-ups, When you look at what's unique to them, Luigi's got invisibility, he's got intangibility, he's got a ghost vacuum, electrical powers. Tails has like a long-range boxing glove, a ton of different bombs, flight gear. Just very different technology to Luigi's powers. They are very different. Mewtwo's Shadow, I'm not going to put not counted, but do know that Mewtwo has all of Vegeta's powers. Did I say Mewtwo versus Shadow? Vegeta versus Mewtwo. Mewtwo has all of Vegeta's powers, but more. Charizard, Blastoise, Venusaur, what a shock. They're almost entirely different. One is a fire flying type with dragon type and steel type moves, and flying and fire, obviously. One is a water type with water, ice, and I think that's mostly it for Blastoise. Kit is water and ice type moves. Venusaur, plant, grass poison type with grass and poison and a couple other coverage type moves. Very different. They are very different power sets because obviously they're meant to like counter each other. Fulgor versus Sector. I'm trying to think. I mean, you guys know what I'm always thinking is what does one have that the other doesn't. So both are cyborgs because they did use the Fulgor that had Eagle in it, or like the Mind of Eagle. Both have plasma weapons, both have missiles, both have like a ton of other shit. I don't think one totally encompasses the other because Fulgor has like that giant form that Sector doesn't have a counter to. Fulgor has a giant chest beam, but Sector has the compactor. He has like nets and like flamethrowers that Fulgor doesn't have. I'll put them in not terribly similar. I think they have enough similarities to their base that they are kind of similar, but they're not super similar because like more of their abilities beyond just Plasma Blade and missiles are different. But it's not super different, you know? Godzilla versus Gamera. Godzilla has a lot of powers Gamera doesn't have. He can shoot beams that like travel through time in weird ways. He is above time in certain states. He can turn into an egg. There's a lot of random powers Godzilla has that I could bring up. He can like grow armor out of his skin. He has like multiple super forms. He can time travel. Snow Godzilla is made of like a particle that like fucks with time weirdly. He's got like a asymmetrical permeable shield, which might make you think that he's got all the same stuff Gamera has. He does not. Gamera can absorb plasma, which I don't know if Godzilla can. I know he can absorb energies and like radiation, but not like specifically plasma. Gamera has flight, and while Godzilla can replicate it with a jetpack and by shooting out from his mouth, it's not really the same. Gamera's flight is a lot more like an offensive thing. He can ram into you while spinning. Shooting plasma is not something Godzilla tends to do very often. I think they're fairly different. Like, they're fairly different. There are very few powers Gamera has that Godzilla doesn't, but I do think enough exists that he would, yeah. Batman, Captain America. Look, the only thing Cap has that Batman doesn't is S.H.I.E.L.D. Is that... I would say that they're very similar. No, I'm going to say not terribly similar. Same reasons Fulgor Sector, actually. Because when you come down to it, at their base, they're very similar. But when you look at their abilities, like beyond that, one's got a shield, the other's got a ton of gadgets. Very different. But their main method of like dealing is just martial arts combat stuff. But I guess I'm fairly different now. Because I realized that with Mario, Sonic, and Fulgor Sector, they have a lot, like, they have several other abilities beyond the base. Batman, Cap, it's just the base idea of martial arts guy that's similar. Tiger Sword, Epion. Both have a sword. Both... That's it. Yeah, that's it, I think. Because Epion's... I don't think the Tiger Sword has, like, a shield in the same way, or, like, tiny little Vulcan guns. Or, like, a whip, but I also don't think Epion has, like, sonic booms and energy blasts in the same way, and, like, hyper speed. I would put them in fairly different. They're not almost entirely different, because the base idea of giant robot with a sword is there, but they're fairly different. And unlike, like, Ryu and Strider, they do use the sword in a very similar way, like a sword. Ryu versus Scorpion. Ryu versus Scorpion. What do they have in common? Ki and fire, similar to Chun-Li and Mai Shiranui. But beyond that, like, Ryu's got his evil form. He's got the Shungoku Satsu, power of nothingness with not Muno Ken. I think that Scorpion is just fire. Nah, fire, teleportation, chains, almost totally different. They're actually almost totally different. While they do have a strong similar base of martial arts guy, even like the way they do their martial arts is different, because Scorpion's like a very heavy reliance on weapons, because like he's like a sword fighter, he's a chain fighter, he's an axe fighter sometimes. Ryu is just punchy guy, you know? Deadpool versus Deathstroke. I know that some people would think like Deadpool's got all the abilities of Deathstroke but more. I think there's actually plenty in Deathstroke's like arsenal that is stuff that Deadpool has never proven he has. He probably has an equivalent that he could pull out, but we've never been shown it. So I can't put it in there. I would say though that they're very similar. Like the continuity gem, sure, that's something that Deadpool has that Deathstroke doesn't, but normally you wouldn't give that to him. You wouldn't give that to him. And to that point, there's a few differences in equipment, but it's not huge. Kirby versus Boo, they got a strong base similarity of like a pudgy, malleable pink thing, with the same sort of like portrayal in like super strength, speed, durability, and both eat and absorb you. But beyond that, I would say fairly different, because Boo's key powers, his like gaseous powers, turning things to candy, versus all the copy abilities Kirby has. Kirby might have enough that he would go into one has all the abilities of the others, but I don't know if Kirby has like a chocolate bean. Ragnar versus Soul. They have Sword. That is about where similarity end. Ragnar summons bits of the Black Beast. He can absorb your soul with like Aramasa, is it called? The Blood Scythe, but its name starts with A. Sometimes I remember, sometimes I don't. Soul is all about fire. He jumps, he fire, he jet punch you. Very different. The only reason they've gone almost totally different is because the base core idea of guy with oversized sword, it's similar enough that it wouldn't go like up there. Gaara versus Toph, I think very similar. They don't quite go in like identical, because you know, like Gaara doesn't control rocks, he just controls sand. While Toph can do all the same things that Gaara can, she can't control gold like in the same way he does with like the Mother Sand stuff. She can't control a chakra, she doesn't really fly the way he does. I think the main thing is that Toph at like a theoretical level could do everything Gaara can do but more, but she is not good with sand, so she doesn't. And she has a lot of stuff that Gaara can't do. But they are very similar in like the base idea of like controlling stuff. Boba Samus, I'm not counting it. Oh, that's Donkey Kong Knuckles, not counting it twice. Chuck Segata, I'm not counting that one either. Guts Nightmare, like, fairly different. Beyond, again, like similar to Ragnar Soul, the idea of guy with giant sword. Guts has bows, bombs, and that's really it. He's not got a big arsenal. Nightmare has soul absorption, he can, like, distort reality, he can... I mean, the main thing is soul distortion, actually. Summon fires, he can, like, summon a giant, like, ghost horse to ride on. He can transform into different forms. He doesn't have necessarily all the abilities of Guts. He doesn't have bombs, he doesn't have arrows, but it's similar. Iron Man Lex Luthor, I think, is one where I don't know enough about their history to say for certain. But I genuinely think that everything Lex can do is just something that Tony's armors can pull off. The only thing is he doesn't have Kryptonian, like, killing gear. He doesn't have Kryptonite. But Kryptonite is almost entirely useless in any versus scenario. So that literally does not fucking matter. I don't know if the Mother Box, if Lex has ever used it to do stuff that Tony can't replicate, but I think just everything Lex can do, Tony can do, and more. Beast Goliath, everything Beast can do, Goliath can do, but more. He can glide as well. They are very similar in that regard. And you know what? Snake versus Sam. Everything Sam has, to my knowledge, Snake has but more. And Darth Vader versus Dr. Doom, everything Vader has, Doom has, including the lightsaber. Doom has energy weapons, similar to a lightsaber that he can, like, create. Telekinesis, Doom has that. Like, breaking illusions, summoning demons even, Doom has that too. There's really nothing Vader can do that Doom can't. Like, Doom is Vader plus more. Goku Superman, not counting the second one. Donkey Kong Knuckles. This is one where you would need someone who knows more. What are Knuckles' unique powers? Like the shovel fucking claw hands in Sonic Adventure? I actually think this might be another case. Like, does Knuckles have anything? Gliding. Of course, gliding. Not terribly similar. A lot of their... I'm trying to think, what does Knuckles even have that's unique? It's really just Punch Glide. I think they're very similar. The main difference comes in that one has a gun and one can glide. Beyond that, they are basically the same, but one is twice the other's size. Wolverine versus Raiden. Wolverine's powers, super senses, regeneration, and claws. Raiden, sword, super speed, like his guns, his staff. Yeah, they're almost totally different. They're almost completely different. Beyond having bladed weapons. And like a Berserker state. Hercule Dan. Everything Hercule has, Dan has and more. You might be thinking about the capsules, but I don't think the capsules, like, you can really, like, would you really look into every single capsule that Hercule has shown? It's not like standard stuff. For the most part, Hercule can't do anything, while Dan can. I guess I'll be fair, I'll give Hercule the jetpack, and I'll say they're fairly different. Because Dan has all the key powers, and Hercule has a jetpack, and beyond that, they're the same basic idea. So they don't go in almost completely different. Yang vs. Tifa, I think... Yang's semblance is different to anything Tifa has. So I can't say that Tifa has everything Yang has but more. But they are fairly different. Because Yang's main thing are those shock gauntlets, like the dual range shock gauntlets, Ember Celica. Very different to anything Tifa has. Her semblance is very different. Meanwhile, Tifa has all the abilities with materia and stuff that Yang doesn't. The only similarity, I guess, is Yang can create fire, and so can Tifa, technically. But the only reason they're not almost totally different is because their main way of fighting is basically the same. Mega Man, Astro Boy. I am almost 100% certain that everything Astro Boy has, Mega Man has, but more. Aside from the butt guns, but the only thing unique about the butt guns is where they are. Like, if Mega Man had a power that gave him nipple guns that just work the same as his Mega Buster, that would not constitute something totally unrelated to anything Astro Boy's got. All of Astro Boy's inbuilt weapons are something that Mega Man has. Green Arrow, Hawkeye. Look, they're almost completely identical. They have all the basically same arrows, except Hawkeye has pin particle arrows, and I think Green Arrow's got a few arrows that Hawkeye doesn't too, to memory, but they're almost entirely identical. There's basically no point of difference between them. Charizard and Greymon. So I think Charizard, with all of his moves, primarily is just breathe fire, hit you with dragon powers. Greymon can do all that too, but he can't fly until you get to War Greymon, at which point, yeah, everything Charizard can do, I'm pretty sure, like, there are, like, probably specific moves, like, War Greymon can't wing attack you because his wing is half of a shield, but come on. In practice, that is just hitting you with a part of your body. For the most part, everything Charizard can do, a form of Greymon can do as well. Dante, Bayonetta, they have guns, but I don't know, and they both, like, can manipulate time to an extent, like, slow it down. I don't know if Bayonetta can create clones, like with Doppelganger. I think they're very different. I can't say, like, completely different, because there is always a possibility there are weapons that, like, are similar between them that I just don't remember. But, Bayonetta's main thing is guns and kicks and summoning arms, and Dante's is swords. But, you know, with their wider weaponry, like, Bayonetta's got a scythe and, like, a whip and stuff, and Dante's got, like, an electric guitar that's electric and a motorcycle. Actually, I'm gonna put almost totally different, because aside from the fact that they can slow down time and have guns, they have almost no overlap, to my memory. Because there's a huge arsenal both have. There could be a lot more overlap than I'm realizing. Bowser versus Ganon. I am pretty sure that there is almost no overlap in their powers. Bowser doesn't use his dark magic much, but he has got a lot of magical powers, but they're not really stuff that Ganon's got. While Ganon's got a lot of powers that Bowser doesn't, I would say they're almost entirely different. Even in the way they fight, Ganon's like a fast sword fighter who shoots with magic, and Bowser's just a brawler. He's just walk up and whomp you kind of guy. Ratchet and Clank versus Jak and Daxter. The main difference I see here, is one's a pair with one gun that does a lot, and the other's a pair with a bunch of guns that do a bunch of things. I would say they're not terribly similar, but there is a lot of crossover with the types of weapons they have. If it weren't for the Light Jack and Dark Jack forms, I would genuinely be willing to believe that Ratchet has everything Jack has and more. Flash Quicksilver. There is nothing that Quicksilver can do that Flash cannot also do, and there are a lot of things Flash can do that Quicksilver can't. Joker Sweet Tooth, almost totally different. They are clowns, but while Joker does have the Joker-mobile, it's got nothing going on in the comic to my knowledge. The Sweet Tooth is totally different to what Joker's got. Needles and Machete is probably something Joker has a similar thing to somewhere, but Joker's all about guns and like gadgets and stuff. There's very little overlap. Mewtwo Shadow, I think everything... No, I don't know if Mewtwo can affect time. If he could, I would be willing to say that Mewtwo has everything Shadow has but more. But power-wise, Mewtwo's all about his telekinesis and a massive array of TMs he can learn and like level up moves. Shadow's got, obviously, as I mentioned before, teleportation, time control. I would say they're not terribly similar, but there is a decent overlap in their only overlap is projecting energy and teleporting. I would say they're fairly different even. Like, even the way they fight. Mewtwo is a lot more long range, a lot more thoughtful. Shadow kind of just runs in, bulldozes you, guns you down. Yeah, it's very different. Meta Carolina. I'm going to actually put this in not counted because they're in the same series, so is Hagar and Zangief, and so's Turtles. Okay, never mind. They're not the same characters. Ignore that. Their weapons are very different. Carolina mostly has pistol, machine gun, like the battle rifle, I think it is, that they give her. Meta has the brute shot, which is very different. I think they have like shield powers and AIs, but I'm gonna put them in actually fairly different. Their basic idea of like the suit with a ton of powers in them, and certain ones that overlap, like... Actually, you know what? They're almost totally different. Like, I think both have an overshield sort of thing going on, but like the time distortion compared to like the super speed, very different powers they focus on as well. Cammy Sonya. Almost entirely different. Even the way they fight is very different. Cammy is all over the place, using her ki to like kick you. And she doesn't really use her ki that much now I think about it, but for the most part she doesn't do much anyway. She's like all kicky. Sonya's all about her gadgets, her guns, her drones and shit. And while she is also kicky and flippy, she's not as quick. I would say that their arsenals are very different. Scout Tracer. They have nothing in common power-wise. Tracer has pistols and time powers, and Scout has super speed with bonk, and a shotgun, and multiple variants of the shotgun, and a baseball bat. Basically entirely different kits. Ken versus Terry, I think, to my memory, they're very similar. I can't say they're identical, because the way their projectiles work are different, and... Is that it? Ken's got fire powers, Terry's got earth powers. Like, they're very similar, but there are differences. Amy Ramona. They're fairly different. I was gonna say that everything Ramona has, Amy has, but more. But no, Amy doesn't have anything like the Pouse to my knowledge. While Ramona doesn't have anything like Amy's random invisibility powers and stuff, and like tornadoes. They're fairly different, but the core idea of girl with hammer is there, so it's not super, like, not almost entirely different, but... Hulk Doomsday. I do not know Hulk well enough to say whether or not Doomsday has all his powers. I'm gonna put them in fairly different. While they both have the same idea of, like, crazy regeneration, super strength punch guy, Doomsday evolves, like, flight and super intelligence and, like, weird stuff like that, and Hulk's got all these gamma powers that Doomsday doesn't. I can't say they're definitely not almost totally different. They have overlap, but beyond the basic idea of strong punch, man who regenerates and is hard to kill, their power sets are different, and they do have other powers beyond those. Like, Doomsday is not releasing big gamma ray bursts or anything, and not, like, getting higher forms, but Hulk's not evolving wings, and doesn't have a virus the way Doomsday does either, so, yeah. Surprisingly, not many identical ones yet. I feel like that's going to change eventually. Zoro, Urza. If one of them wasn't a dedicated sword fighter, I would say almost entirely different. But because... No, even then, no. Almost totally different. Their main similarity is that they utilize blades. But Zoro's main thing is like 3 swords at one time, and Urza's is just 1 sword at a time, and she fights very differently with it. She's more of a juggernaut. Her armors are all totally different to Zoro's Haki powers. Yeah, they're very different. Deadpool, Pinkie Pie, almost totally... Actually, no. Deadpool has all of Pinkie's abilities. But the Pinkie Sense... Okay. Pinkie Sense, I will put them in almost totally different. Just for the Pinkie Sense alone, because, like, breaking the 4th wall is barely a power Pinkie has, and beyond that, she barely has any powers. Like, she does have regeneration, she can, like, she has, like, a weird cartoony Toon Force thing going on, but she doesn't do a lot with it in the show. Meanwhile, Deadpool, guns and shit, swords, very different. Lara Croft versus Nathan Drake, I genuinely think that everything Nathan has, Lara has, plus more. I think that that's where that goes. His guns, Lara has equivalents and more to them, and like mystical weapons that Nathan doesn't have. It sucks, but you know. Scrooge versus Shovel Knight. I don't think anyone's going to be surprised that Scrooge, Shovel Knight, that's going straight into almost totally different. While I'm sure Scrooge has a shovel, I'm sure Shovel Knight has, I'm pretty sure a lot of his equipment, like the phase lock and stuff, is stuff that Scrooge doesn't have, while Scrooge has, like, the ray guns and stuff that Shovel doesn't, and they fight differently, too. There's 2 Venom Banes, one's the Rooster Teeth version, and one's the YouTube version. I think everything Bane has, Venom has. Because Bane literally is just, he can grow in size and strength, and use guns, and, like, I'm pretty sure Venom can use a gun if he picks one up, and Venom's got a ton of powers that Bane doesn't have a counter to. Megazord and Voltron. Voltron's definitely got a lot more weapons. There's actually not a lot I can think of that one has or the other doesn't. They're almost completely identical when I think about it. Like, yes. You know what, no, I'm gonna put it very similar, because beyond the sword, like, the Mastodon Ice Breath is different, and the spinning laser blades are different, and, like, they're completely different. That's basically the only thing they have beyond sword and lasers that are all over their bodies. Natsu versus Ace. Honestly, very similar, because the way they use fire, while different, it's still just fire. But the reason they're not almost completely identical is that Natsu's ability to consume elements, especially fire, and Ace's ability to turn into fire, are so different that I can't put them in almost entirely identical. The way I can Sub-Zero and Glacius, come on. They teleport with ice, I think. Well, Glacius can't teleport, but he can turn into, like, goop, and that basically allows him to move around with ice too. Shoot ice, create ice weapons, fucking move around with ice. Yeah, they ice things. The main difference is that Glacius's natural alien powers to adapt to the, like, elements of the area around him. Bihan and Kuai Liang can't do that, but Glacius doesn't really do that either, does he? Android 18 versus Captain Marvel. Everything 18 can do, Captain Marvel can do and more. She has more powers, she has her cosmic senses, she has her energy absorption, which 18 does not have. 18 literally just has, like, energy blasts and flight, and Captain Marvel has that and more. Metal, Sonic, and Zero, almost totally different. Like, Metal Sonic's way of fighting is, I mean, he doesn't really fight half the time. He just sort of runs next to you and you just gotta race him. But, like, he flies, he shoots energy blasts, he's got a ton of weapons in him, he can absorb things. Zero has a ton of weapons, but they're all very different in effect. Big glaives, big swords, very different powers beyond. Both can stop time, which is not a big enough part of either kit to get above that. Lucario, Renamon, I think everything Renamon has, Lucario has but more, because we're not using, like, Digivolution and Mega Evolution. Renamon just has, like, Energy Palms and Grass Leaf Attack, which Lucario doesn't necessarily have Diamond Storm in his arsenal, but the idea of just a long-range bunch of things at once, yeah. There's really nothing Lucario, or nothing that Renamon has that Lucario doesn't have. Let's be fucking honest here. Balrog vs TJ combo! Almost identical. That sounds so racist in the wrong context, just looking at them. But, oh, they're almost identical, they're both black. No. While they do have differences in, like, the way they go about fighting, for the most part, they're big, strong boxing guy. And while TJ has this, like, second wing thing, I'm pretty sure there are, like, types of, like, moves that Balrog has that TJ doesn't. But beyond the specific style they fight with, which we're not taking into account here, considering that almost every character fights differently to their opponent, except like Hagar Zangief. They're very similar. Shredder and Silver Samurai. Fairly different. I can't say they're almost totally different, because at the end of the day, you have got two guys in armor who primarily fight with sword. At least, like, most versions of Shredder primarily use a sword. Alongside their claws. They don't just use the claws. Most of them have a sword half the time. Shredder does, like, Harada has one power that I don't think Shredder has in any of his tech, but then Shredder's tech, like, he's got a lot of stuff that Harada doesn't. He's got his super form, he's got time stop, stuff like that. Smokey McGruff, if it wasn't for McGruff's stupid bubble thing, like his friendship bubble, I would say that everything McGruff has, Smokey has too, and the monster truck. As it is, I will say that they're not terribly similar. They do have the baseline, they do have a very strong baseline of an animal who stops time as their main thing. But beyond that, Smokey can grow big and has a shovel, and McGruff has a car and a button. But the main thing they always do is stop time. So their main power is the same between them. Thor versus Wonder Woman, fairly different. The whole thing of using a mystical weapon to power yourself up. Actually, no. They're almost totally different. Again, because I'm not counting super strength, speed, and durability as, like, unique, because look how many of these characters have it. Like, even Dan is superhuman by, like, regular people's standards. Thor's powers and Wonder Woman's powers are very different to each other. Naruto versus Ichigo, that's another case where their powers are so different. Ichigo, for the most part, is just Getsuga Tensho. Naruto has, like, the Rasengan, the clones. Like, they're very different in how they function, their way their power systems work. They're different. They fight different. Batman Beyond Spider-Man 2099. Again, I think they're very different. I can't say they're almost totally different, because they have overlap in, like, the claws and shit they got going on. But Terry's gadgets and Miguel's powers are not similar in almost any way. Sephiroth versus Virgil. The baseline of Dark Swordsman is there, but the way they actually fight is almost totally different. Virgil doesn't have the same kind of extensive arsenal Dante does. Dante probably has more overlap with Sephiroth than Virgil does in terms of power set. Virgil, he can summon swords, like, to fight with him. He's got Devil Trigger, he has Beowulf. Sephiroth has all the materia, the black materia, Supernova, safer Sephiroth form. But he doesn't have, like, summoning swords to my knowledge the way Virgil does. Batman, Black Panther, fairly different. I can't say, like, they're super different, but they're fairly different. Panther's cowl and Batman's suit. Actually, now I think about it, no, there's like no overlap. So yeah, they're fairly different. They're not almost totally different, because, like, the whole stealth fighter thing is there, but fairly different. Raven Twilight, I don't think there's a single spell I saw in Friendship is Magic that Twilight has that Raven doesn't have as well. And Raven has stuff Twilight doesn't, like Conceptual Erasure. So yeah, that's just a case where Raven just eclipses Twilight entirely. Jotaro versus Kenshiro. Almost totally different. Jotaro does not even punch you. I mean, he can, and he probably would, but Jotaro is primarily fighting with a stand, which can stop time and shoot its fingers out. Kenshiro can fire ki, kill you with a tap, go intangible, yeah, blast you from nowhere, after images, yeah, all different. Crash Spyro, I also think Crash and Spyro are super different. I don't know where any overlap in power set whatsoever. No, they even fight in remotely similar ways. A 4-leg guy, element powers, 2-leg guy who spins. I guess Spyro can probably spin. But nah, there's very little overlap. Sora Pit. I don't know these two well enough. I'm gonna say not terribly similar. Fairly different. I know enough to know that Pit has a bunch of guns and Sora's got a bunch of spells, and those are not similar. Frank West versus Leon Kennedy. Ironically enough, I think that Leon has nothing that Frank doesn't have in terms of his arsenal. Frank has a gun, Frank has a knife. Leon does not have the tons of shit that Frank has got going on. Doctor Strange versus Dr. Fate are basically identical. They can both do yes. Ryu versus Jin. Actually, I think very similar. The main difference to... Why did I move Garrett off? The main difference is Ryu's ki and Jin's lasers don't really work the same. But more importantly, Jin can fly, and Ryu can destroy your soul with the Shungoku Satsu. And those are different, but beyond that, they are very similar. I don't think... Is there any difference between Jack and Afro and what they can do? I don't think so. I think they are just a sword guy. And, like, that's basically all they got going on in terms of, like, their arsenals and abilities. I don't think there's much difference, except Jack could probably jump better. Afro does fight more dirty, and he does utilize all of his equipment that he has on him, like his cigarettes and probably spit in your face, and Jack wouldn't do that. But I don't recall them having abilities that are, like, super different. Carnage, Lucy, like, what do they have in common in terms of powers? Or even in general. Like, Carnage, goopy stuff. Like, I can see the tendrils are similar to the vectors, but the vectors work completely differently and do different things, and Carnage's symbiote also is very different. Optimus Prime Gundam. There is nothing Gundam has that Prime doesn't have. I'm pretty sure that in G1 there are versions of Prime with a shield. His ion cannon is similar to the big fuck-off guns, and his Energon axe is just the beam saber, but shaped like an axe. And Prime has swords too, I'm pretty sure. But Prime has abilities that... Because, like, with all the G1, you also got to consist of, like, Alternity and shit. Gundam doesn't have anything for that. Nightwing Daredevil. Probably fairly different. Because beyond, like, their base martial arts guy thing... actually, no, I'm going to put them not terribly similar because their main weapons are quite similar. As, like, two sticks that combine into a bigger stick. The main difference is Nightwing has wingdings and Daredevil has a radar sense, but everything else is basically the same. Mario Sonic, not counting that, we already did that. Ultron Sigma. Nothing Sigma has, Ultron doesn't have. Roshi Jiraiya. Super different, actually. Like, so different. It's amusingly different. Jiraiya's, like, chakra powers and chakra jutsus are very different to anything Roshi has, but Roshi does have, like, esoteric abilities most Dragon Ball characters don't, that Jiraiya doesn't. Like, Jiraiya can't turn into a big bulky guy, he cannot do the evil containment wave. Those are things that Roshi has that Jiraiya doesn't. Thanos Darkseid. I think they're very similar. I think that... There are probably things Thanos... I'm pretty sure there's got to be things Thanos can do that Darkseid can't. Like, I don't know if Darkseid's mind powers are quite on the level, or his, like, control over the soul with the soul gem is probably better than what Darkseid can do, I'd imagine. I can't put them in very similar because they do have differences. Or in identical, but I do think they're very similar. Aquaman, Namor. I'm pretty sure that Namor can do very similar things to what Aquaman can do with his like control over the things. I'm not going to count Aquaman can make his fish stronger and Namor can't, as he just sweeps, because that's almost entirely irrelevant. But they are almost identical in every way. I guess, I don't know, I need to check on the Aquaman being able to de-evolve you thing, because if that's genuine, then I do think he could go and has all the same powers, but more. Mega Man Battle Royale, I'm going to put that in not counted, because, like, that's... I'm not sure how I would even go about considering that one. Black Widow versus Widowmaker. I think that everything Widowmaker has, Black Widow has, like, done in the comics. Captain Marvel, Shazam, I'm going to put them in fairly different. I think the way they fight is primarily the same, punch, project energy, but I'm almost entirely certain that things like Captain Marvel's absorption and stuff, and her senses are different to Shazam's wisdom and his massive array of spells that he's demonstrated at various points. Wario DDD. They can vore you, and I think that is the only similarity. The way they fight is different, their power-ups are different, they're just very different. They're very, very different, to my knowledge, of course. Ben 10 Green Lantern, I think... God, that's going to be... no matter what I say here, someone's going to get on my ass for it. I don't think there's anything Hal can do that Alien X can't. But I don't think there's anything Alien X can do that Hal can't. And because the rest of Ben's aliens are completely irrelevant, and Hal can do... I think I'm going to actually have to put them in almost completely identical. No. Very similar because Alien X doesn't really do constructs. But all of Alien... Or actually, no. Just straight up. Because Alien X doesn't tend to do constructs or like stuff like that, I'm willing to bet that every power that Alien X has shown, Hal has shown as well. I have not seen a single power that Alien X has shown to me that I've not been able to see Hal do as well in the comics. That's going to piss so many people off. Weiss versus Mitsuru. Very similar. I think I recall there are some abilities. Yeah, there's like abilities Mitsuru has that Weiss doesn't, and vice versa. Like some of Mitsuru's like I don't know if they call spells in Persona. I've not played any Persona games, but like her abilities in those games are different to what Weiss has, and Weiss has like different elements, but they're very similar beyond that. Like summoning, obviously their weapons are the same. Controlling ice, yeah. Johnny Cage versus Captain Falcon. Very similar. Look, Johnny's like god power doesn't really play a factor here, but aside from that, he's just like a punchy kicky guy who can throw an energy ball, and Captain Falcon's a punchy kicky guy who can light on fire. I can light on fire, it doesn't make him special. Aang versus Edward, I think they got to be considered totally different, because like the outcome can be similar, but the way they actually use their powers is so different. One is like more science based, like here's all the elements and how to warp them, and the other is like more mysticism. Yeah. Ghost Rider Lobo. Does Lobo have stuff that goes? I mean, yeah, Lobo's regeneration is very different to the way Ghost Rider's regeneration works, I guess. Yeah, I gotta say they're fairly different. I can't say they're totally different, because at the end of the day, it's a guy on a bicycle who... on a bicycle. Yeah, it's a guy on a bicycle who's very hard to kill and regenerates from anything and is super over the top and can vore you. But most of their arsenal is different. Dragon Zord versus Kiryu. I was thinking if there's anything Dragon Zord can do that Kiryu cannot. Yes. Like the laser tail, the drill tail thing, the super form. They're fairly different, but like not to the extent where you'd go a tier above. Yeah. Actually, honestly, not terribly similar. They're definitely not super different. They're not very similar though, because they do have like there is like the super form that the Dragon Zord has that Kiryu doesn't have a response to. But for the most part, the primary bit of their arsenal is big Tyrannosaurus bot with a tail that they smack you with, and a shitload of missiles and guns and shit all over the place. But aside from that, like, I think... I'm actually trying to remember what Death Battle said the Dragon Zord has. Like... It hasn't even got, like, the most amount of missiles. It's, like, got a big tail blast, a head blast. It's, like, skewing the line. I'm gonna put it not terribly similar, because just, like, the way they... Like, just the shape of them is similar. And in this case, that does matter. Sasuke versus Hiryu. Sasuke versus Hiei. I don't think Hiei can do anything that Sasuke can't. I think the dragon flame thing, I forget what it's called. I think that Sasuke's Amaterasu is close enough. I don't think there's anything Hiei has that Sasuke doesn't have. Ganondorf versus Dracula. This is where I don't know enough about Castlevania to say for certain where this goes. I'm going to put them in not terribly similar. I feel like I've mostly seen a lot of similar powers with them. I'm going to put them very similar. I've seen a lot of the same powers. No. I'm going back and forth. I'm so stupid. I've seen enough powers that are different, but a lot of the powers I've seen are similar, but this is one where I would need, like, you guys to tell me. Yeah. Mob Tatsumaki, I don't think there's anything Mob, or that Tatsumaki has that Mob doesn't. The main difference is Tatsumaki cannot attack and block at the same time, but for the most part, all of Tatsumaki's powers, Mob has and more. Like he can absorb things and transfer his power. Tatsumaki can't do that. But for the most part, she's all about her telekinesis and crushing things and yanking things around and like forcing more gravity on you. And Mob can do all that, but more stuff as well. Deadpool mask. The mask has everything Deadpool has, but more. Might Guy versus All Might. I think that nothing All Might has, Might Guy doesn't. Like, yeah, he can grow in size, but that's literally just to get into the state of being All Might in the first place. Like, the punching and causing big gusts of wind, Might Guy can do that too. But Might Guy can shoot things with, like, the speed of his... No. But then... No, actually, because Might Guy doesn't have constructs. All of his constructs are just manifestations of his chakra. For them, when he shoots, like, the Daytime Tiger, I think it's called, it's still just a blast of wind that just happens to be shaped differently. I actually think that they're almost identical. Because all Might Guy does with his gates is make himself hit harder. It just so happens that it looks very different to what All Might does, but it's really not. The main difference is when All Might punches from a distance, it's just a blast of wind, but Might Guy's doing it a little bit faster so the wind catches fire. That's the only difference. Beyond that, it's really just that Might Guy can get stronger and All Might can't. But, like, that's not a big deal. Static Shock, Miles Morales, actually almost unrelated beyond the electricity, but I do think the electricity is big enough that I'm going to keep them in fairly different. But the way they use it is very different. Like, Static's all about long-range electricity, moving things with electricity, flying on his little dish, his regeneration. Miles... Did I say Miles was doing that? Static does that. If I said Miles does all that, I meant Static. Miles is more about touch-based use of his electricity, punching you with lightning, turning invisible. Yeah, they're fairly different, but the main core of their power set is exactly the same. Black Canary versus Sindel. I don't think there's anything Black Canary can do that Sindel cannot. It's just Black Canary's better at doing it. Yeah. I guess there's the gadgets, but like they just make screams, and Sindel can do that with her face, and so can Black Canary. There is nothing that Leonardo has that Jason doesn't have, without going into stuff like Graviturtle that I mentioned earlier. Everything Leo has, Jason has. I guess, yeah, Leo's got the teleportation sword. I just would not give him that, though. Like, personally, that's like if you're gonna go with what every... Like what's consistent across iterations, I wouldn't give him that. And if you were to give what's standard for all versions, like what's standard for 2003, what's standard for 1986, and you would also give Leonardo like a grappling hook, or like laser swords, it's fuck you with Ninja Turtles. There is nothing Genos can do that War Machine cannot. I was gonna say there's nothing Esdeath can do that Grey can't, but no, Mahabdama. They're very similar though. Like, the way they go about fighting is different, but for the most part, like, they're tactical ice users who make constructs with ice, just Dre does it better. They're very similar, they just fight a bit different. Goro versus Machamp, again, very similar. Goro's difference is he's got claws, and Fire Breath, and Machamp is that he's got guts. That's it, and some of his, like, specific moves, Goro doesn't have a counter to. Cable Booster Gold, I think they're fairly different. I think they're... The only thing they have in common, I think, is that they can time travel and whim, at a whim. Beyond that, almost entirely different. But because time travel is the big core of the matchup, I'm gonna say that big similarity is enough to keep it from the top tier. Obi-Wan Kakashi, though, they have almost nothing in common. They have basically nothing shared between them whatsoever at all. Jake Long and Danny Phantom, I think they're probably more similar than they look, but still super different. So fairly different. I don't know, I've not seen either series though, so I can't be certain. But from my memory of the Death Battle, they've got like plenty of similarities. It's just like they're not huge similarities. So, She-Ra, Wonder Woman. I don't think She-Ra has anything Wonder Woman doesn't. No. She's got her sword that has all its different forms, so not terribly similar. Nah, fairly different. They have like basically the same kit going on, but Wonder Woman's got a ton of equipment that She-Ra has no counter to, and She-Ra's got one thing that Wonder Woman doesn't. But they're fairly different beyond that. Beerus Galaxia, beyond the fact that they shoot energy and destroy things, which they don't even do the same way, they are very different. They don't even fight similarly to my knowledge. I think, yeah, aside from the ability to instantly destroy stuff by pointing at it, they are basically completely different in every way. Which is just my limited knowledge. There is nothing Zuko can do that Todoroki cannot. Yeah, Zuko has swords. Good luck with that, buddy. Wally Archie Sonic. Very similar. Because, like, the main thing they got going on is just being really fucking fast. But, actually, no, they're not even that similar. Because beyond being fast, Archie Sonic's got a ton of elemental powers and, like, reality warping. And Wally's reality warping is utilized in a very different way. They're actually, I'm going to put them in not terribly similar. They do have plenty of differences in their kit. But there's also plenty of overlap and plenty of stuff that's just, like, it doesn't matter anyway. 7 Battle Royale, not counted. Winter Soldier, Red Hood, they're very similar. The main difference is Red Hood can buff himself with Venom, and Bucky can't. But Bucky's got the invincible arm, and Red Hood's got the invincible face, so yeah. Venom versus Krona. I don't think there's anything Venom can do that Ragnarok cannot do for Krona. Yeah, because, like, Ragnarok can goop himself into any sort of weapon for Krona to use, and then they just have the same as what Venom's got going on. So, but more, because they have screams. Sabrewolf Talbane, there is nothing I remember Sabrewolf having that Talbane does not have as well. Beyond, like, flaming bats, which, that is such a nothing thing when the other guy has flaming dragon and nunchaku, and yeah, there's not a lot that, yeah, there's not a lot there. Reds versus Blues, I'm not counting that. That's, I had to compare, cross-reference like 10 characters. Batgirl, Spider-Gwen, it's like going in the same tier as Batman Spider-Man, because it's basically the same matchup. Sanji versus Rock Lee. So Sanji has like the Haki stuff, and Rock Lee just can get stronger and has bandages. The bandages is enough to keep him from going in all the same abilities, but they're very very similar, not terribly similar. Despite how they're named, these things are actually like very close tiers. I'm gonna say not terribly similar, but like the main, like, there's not a lot different really to my knowledge. Hulk, Broly, they're fairly different. Hulk, his gamma bursts are different to like Broly's key powers. But Hulk's regeneration, Broly doesn't have that, but Broly's got all the key shit that Hulk doesn't have. But both can like split space and like break dimensions and stuff. Yeah. Yoda, King Mickey. Does King Mickey not have telekinesis? I don't recall. I am going to go with the assumption that King Mickey does not, to say that this is not a case of Mickey has everything Yoda has and more. And I'm just going to say that they're very similar. Because the main difference is that Yoda has telekinesis and Mickey has all these powers that... Actually, no. Fuck it. I'm pretty sure Mickey's got telekinesis, because Sora's got telekinesis through certain spells to my memory. But my memory's not perfect. But I think it's totally possible that there's nothing Yoda has that Mickey doesn't. Shadow Ryuko, almost entirely different. Ryuko's a sword fighter with super regeneration, a shape-shifting outfit, jet booster feet. I mean, I guess Shadow's technically got that with his shoes, but their powers basically unrelated to each other. Lex Doom, again, I think everything Lex Luthor has, Doom has, but more. Heihachi Geese, everything Heihachi has, Geese has, but with more. Blake Mikasa. While the grapple hook of Gamble Shroud may seem similar to the gear that Mikasa has, they're actually very different in how they're utilized. But I'm gonna say the core thing of Sword Fighter Girl who zips around is close enough, but beyond that, the main thing is the Thunder Spears are very different to Blake's Semblance, so they're actually quite different in that regard. Poe and Iron Fist. They're very similar. They're very similar. Yeah. Star vs. Steven. Basically the completely different power sets. There's almost no overlap to my knowledge. Link Cloud that's just another one. Batman, Iron Man. Nothing Batman has, Iron Man doesn't have. Except maybe the mind control of Final Batsuit. But I would not be shocked if in the comics Tony has something that is got that going on. So I don't think there's anything that Batman has that Tony doesn't. Goku Black, Reverse Flash. It's harder to find something they have in common. It's just time travel. And at least with Cable Booster, they both also have energy blasters and stuff and shields. These two don't even have that. Their powers are completely different. Beyond the fact they are both fast and can both get alternate versions of themselves. But anyone with time travel can do that, theoretically. So, very different. Kool-Aid Man versus Macho Man. I do not recall anything Kool-Aid Man or anything Macho Man can do that Kool-Aid Man can't. Beyond turning into a constellation, I guess, but that's such a weird power. I'm gonna say that they're not terribly similar. They're not terribly similar. Because the powers that Randy has that are shared with Kool-Aid Man are just stuff like making explosions. And Kool-Aid Man's method of pulling off the transmutation stuff that Macho Man I'm pretty sure has done is very different. Dio card. What do they have in common power-wise? They can drink blood to get better from things. That is it. I don't think there's anything more than that. Yeah, they're so different, which is great for the animation in this case. I'm just going to say it right now. If they had similar powers, that animation would not have gone as hard. Shao Kahn Akuma. Where'd I put Shao Kahn and Bison? Because it's going in the same tier. It's basically... yeah, it's basically the same thing going on. Korra Storm. There is... I think the only thing Korra has that Storm doesn't is her control over fire is better and she can heal herself. So yeah, basically everything in Storm's arsenal is shared with Korra. Oh no, other way around. Everything in Korra's arsenal is shared with Storm, but Storm's got more. Madara Aizen. I don't remember. I wish I remembered enough. The main thing is they both have the illusion powers. They both have higher forms that turn them into cum people. They both summon things. I'm gonna put them in very similar because I don't remember well enough. Because the main thing I remember is that their illusion powers are very similar. Popeye Saitama. No. Actually, hold on. I just remembered Saitama has that stupid ever-evolving thing. Popeye doesn't have that. Then I'm going to put them in almost entirely different. The only reason it was in Everything's the Same is because Saitama doesn't have powers. So Popeye has no powers either, except he does. Fuck you. Yeah. But when you include the stupid regeneration thing, the only thing that they share is just super strength. And again, everyone here is super strong. So, they almost totally different. Popeye is all about his weird punches and Toon Force, and Saitama is just, he is good at evolving in strength. That's gonna look so, this is why this tier list is not gonna work if I just post an image of it. Because the explanation is needed to understand where it's coming from with that. Because like otherwise people are gonna go like, oh, they're basically the same because they both punch good, but like everyone here Tracer punches harder than most humans in real life could accomplish. Harley versus Jinx. I think aside from pogo jumping and gun, they are almost entirely different. Their toolkits are not remotely similar. Scarlet Witch Zatanna, the same thing going on. Tanjiro Jonathan, I think it's very similar. Like, they breathe, they get sunlight, strength. It's just that Jonathan has more of a punch focus and Tanjiro has more of a sword focus. I'm gonna put them in not terribly similar. Because I should just rename this like so it doesn't seem that way. They're so similar. There's plenty of overlap, but there is difference in mostly just the way they fight is entirely different. In just in case that one. There is nothing Vegeta can do that Thor can't, including Existence Erasure. I'm almost certain I can recall Thor having something like Hakai himself. There is nothing Omni-Man can do that Homelander can't, except win a death battle. Homelander doesn't have the same regeneration abilities and like survival, but beyond that, like everything, it's all the same. Homelander even has less weaknesses than Omni-Man. That's a really funny example. Magneto Tetsuo. So this is an interesting one because like in effect, their main power is basically the same because everything has a magnetic field. So Magneto can move anything. He can move. It doesn't need to be magnetic. He can move your atoms around, and basically Tetsuo's telekinesis works the same. But beyond that, Magneto's, like, the breadth of Magneto's power goes far beyond, while Tetsuo has mind powers. But really, in effect, they just have telekinesis. Like, they're very similar. I'm gonna put them in so-so, because the main difference is one has, like, mind powers, and the other has, like, different things he can do with his, like, is more precise. Like, Magneto's abilities are more precise to my knowledge, but they're very similar in a lot of ways. It's just telekinesis. Heracles and Sunum Hung, aside from the arrows, I don't think there's anything Heracles has got going on that Sunum Hung does not. But I'm not here to, like, versus debate anything to do with Sunum Hung, so I'm just gonna put them in almost totally different and just leave it at that. Even though I do think Sunum Hung has just everything Heracles has, but more. Boba Fett versus the Predator. To be honest, there is very little difference. I'm gonna put them in very similar, because the main difference is jetpack and sword versus invisibility plus scythe. Of course, Predator has got laser swords and certain things, and I'm pretty sure that certain armors the Predator has also have a jetpack, but I would need to do extra research for that. I don't feel like doing that right now. Excalibur Raiden. There is nothing Raiden has that Excalibur doesn't, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure... Like, I guess you could argue Muramasa the way it works, but Muramasa is kind of shit. And kind of heavily overrated. So I'm just going to put him in... There's nothing really Raiden's got going on that Excalibur doesn't have. And there's absolutely nothing John Wick has that Bond doesn't. Because John Wick's just got guns. Bond's got guns and more. Black Adam, Apocalypse... There is nothing Black Adam has that Apocalypse doesn't beyond the wisdom of Zahudi, but I'm going to be fair and just put them as very similar. Because the only... Like, I guess I can't, because, like, Apocalypse has got very different powers to Adam. It's... The wisdom of Zahudi is the one thing skirting ahead, because Apocalypse, I'm pretty sure, can control the elements, like weather, with certain things, and I'm pretty sure just projecting energy is going to be projecting plasma, which is all lightning is plasma. So, yeah, it's still just plasma. Trunks Silver. The only thing they have in common is their time travel. So it's going in the similar tier to Goku Black Reverse Flash. But yeah. SpongeBob Aquaman. SpongeBob has, in episodes to my knowledge, which is very little, but from what I've heard, demonstrated mind control to an extent. But Aquaman doesn't even have mind control in Super Friends. And I am 100% certain that SpongeBob can talk to fish. So, yes, there's nothing Aquaman has SpongeBob doesn't. There is nothing Michael has that Jason doesn't. And Jason has, I think, just like more like the fucking worm thing with his regeneration. Sauron, Lich King, there is a lot of overlap with their ability to control and warp souls. I'm gonna put them in so-so, because while that is a big thing, the main they do have different weapons, they do have different ways of fighting. Sauron has probably more powers, but for the most part, their powers overlap very well. Deku and Asta. Oh, I accidentally grabbed Raven Phoenix. Want this to be ordered. Raven Phoenix was after Stitch Rocket and before Guts Dimitri. I do not think there is a single thing Deku and Asta have in common. So you can guess where that's going. They could not possibly be more different. Gogeta and Vegeta were the same guy. Ant-Man, Adam. Everything Ant-Man or Adam can do, Ant-Man can as well. The only difference, I guess, is like if you buy the regeneration, which I don't, or if you go like Ant-Man can't shoot fucking nuclear blast, but it's literally just like a little pellet blast. So there's really nothing Adam can do that Ant-Man can't replicate in some way. Oh fuck. Chosen Undead and Last Dragonborn. I do not well enough know what their full breadth. I've read the whole blog. I do not remember the full breadth of their arsenals. I'm gonna put them in so-so because I do not remember. Killua Misaka. I don't think there's anything Killua has Misaka can't do. Except the claws. That's it. So, that's it. That's the only difference. Darth Vader, Obito, I think the only things they have similar in powers is they have telekinesis. Beyond that, they have almost in a completely different power set. Stitch Rocket. Fairly different. I wouldn't say they're super different, but they're fairly different. Like, they're fairly different. Like, yeah, their equipment is very not same. But in effect, it's mostly just a bunch of guns. And they're mostly just like a little goblin guy. But in the end, Raven Phoenix, almost identical. I know that, like, visually they look very different, but frankly, they have almost the same powers. It's just that they manifest them in slightly differently colored birds. There is nothing Guts has that Dimitri doesn't. Actually, no, I don't know if Dimitri has bombs or anything, but I'm gonna assume that he does. There is nothing Manhunter can do that Surfer can't, and Bill of Discord have the exact same powers, basically. Just... Actually, no, not even that. There is nothing Discord can do that Bill can't, because Bill has the soul hacks that Discord lacks. So that is the tier list. That was interesting. At the bottom, the most identical characters, obviously Vegito and Gogeta, have almost no difference. You have the characters who basically have the same power set going on. Asterix next to Jack Afro and Aquaman Namor. You have the characters who are very similar. Asterix to Madara versus Aizen. And Thanos versus Darkseid. They could obviously change. The characters who are, so-so. A lot of crossover, a lot of difference. Asterix on Chosen Born. The ones where one character's just got all the abilities the other does, but more. Hilariously does not always guarantee a win. Because Shadow has more than Vegeta, he lost. Master Chief has more weapons than Doomguy, he lost. Pikachu should have won, but he lost, despite having more going on. Not Goku. Lion-O has more going on than He-Man, he lost. Mega Man has more going on than Astro Boy, he lost. I think from that point onwards, it does start to form a trend, though. Captain Marvel has more than Android 18, she lost. Frank has more than Leon. He lost. Sasuke has more than Hiei. He lost. Mob has more than Tazumaki. He lost. Cinderella has more than Black Canary. She lost. From there on out, I think it all about matches up except for Gisei Hachi and Omnilander, of course. Yeah. So that's that. The characters were fairly different, and then the characters who are... There's nothing really overlapping. It's actually interesting. I thought there would be a lot more characters who, like, a lot more matchups where they're almost identical, but it's not a lot. Probably because most of the ones that should be there end up in the category of they're identical, but this character has all this extra shit. Like, Bilcord should be in almost identical, but they make an explicit case that Discord cannot affect the soul. And look, if you buy the fact that magic can affect Wendigos, and there's like a statement that Discord knows all the spells, then it's basically identical. But otherwise, it goes here. So, that was that video. My voice hurts. Goodbye, everyone. Have a good day.